Right then, the international break is finally behind us, and thank God for that. Feels like it's dragged on for months, not weeks, but now we can finally shift our focus back to the stuff that actually matters. Celtic Football Club. The boys return to action this Sunday, and it's away at Dens Park against Dundee. A fixture that, let's be honest, rarely offers surprises. But still, there's plenty going on beneath the surface that makes this one worth getting into. Now, before we get too deep into the preview, let's rewind a bit, because there's been some chatter this week that could end up being pretty significant come January. Out of nowhere, a report from the Times claims Celtic are on the verge of signing Bobby Clark. And we're not talking about some half-baked rumor whispered on a fan forum. This one comes with a price tag, £6 million, supposedly agreed already, with the deal set to go through as soon as the window opens. $6 million. For a player we've barely heard linked to the club before now. That's not the usual Celtic move, is it? Bobby Clark, for those who don't follow English football too closely, is a 20-year-old midfielder currently on loan at Derby County. But his parent club is Red Bull Salzburg, who snapped him up from Liverpool just over a year ago for a hefty fee. Around $10 million, they say. The Liverpool connection is strong here. He came through at Newcastle United, where his dad, Lee Clark, was a bit of a legend, before moving to Liverpool where he made a few first-team appearances under Jurgen Klopp. Clearly, he's got talent. Salzburg picked him up when their new manager Pep Lijnders, formerly Klopp's assistant, took the job and started shopping for players he already knew. Bobby was one of them. He played in the Champions League last season, so this isn't just some project player without experience. But things changed quickly. By August, Salzburg loaned him out to Derby County in the English Championship. And that's where it gets a bit murky. If he's on a full season loan, how exactly is Celtic planning to swoop in and sign him in January? You'd assume Salzburg would have to cut that loan short, and Derby, at least according to their manager, haven't heard anything about this deal. But the journalist who broke the story has history with Bobby's father, so there might be something to it after all. And let's be honest, it does feel like the sort of transfer Celtic should be making. Young, technically gifted, a midfielder with top-level experience, and still loads of potential. It's an area of the park where we've looked flat this season, maybe even stale. A player like Bobby Clark could inject something fresh into the middle of the park. But if this kind of money is being spent in January, and that's still a big if, what does that say about the direction of the club? That brings us to Brendan Rodgers. There's been some noise this week that he might not stick around beyond the end of the season, with TalkSport suggesting he's increasingly likely to return to the English Premier League. Now, say what you will about the source, but the timing is interesting. If Celtic are willing to fork out big money on a player like Clark, maybe it's a sign that they want to convince Rodgers to stay. After all, these are the type of players he loves to work with: young, intelligent, adaptable midfielders with high ceilings. And while the club hasn't confirmed a thing, and we've seen deals fall apart before, this one feels like it's got legs, especially considering how early the chatter has started. Still, if Rodgers is planning his exit, then that January window becomes even more fascinating. Are we looking at a proper rebuild, or is it going to be a patch-up job just to get us over the line this season? At the moment, it feels like Celtic are caught between two ideas, one foot in the future and one stuck in the past. The midfield isn't clicking. The wings are inconsistent. And we've got more questions than answers about who actually deserves a place in this team. Now, with all that swirling around, we've got Dundee coming up, a team sitting second from bottom, struggling badly, and managed by our old pal Tony Docherty, a man who recently reminded his own supporters that Dundee haven't beaten Celtic at Dens Park in over 3 decades. That's not exactly a rallying cry, is it? The last time Dundee beat us at all was way back in May of 2001, at Celtic Park, believe it or not. 2-0 that day. The scorer? Fabian Caballero, a name that feels like it belongs in a different era altogether. 46 games since then, and we've won 39 of them. It's domination, pure and simple. So, on paper, this should be straightforward. But with the way this season's gone, nothing feels guaranteed. There's uncertainty around the squad, players coming back from international duty with knocks, others just out of form, and Rodgers under pressure to make bold decisions. Take the attack, for example. With Daisen Maeda potentially injured, he pulled out of the Japan squad with a leg issue. There's a big question about who starts on the wings. Yang's shown flashes, but nothing consistent. Palma's been hit and miss. And then there's Luis Palma and Marco Tilio, who haven't exactly seized their moments either. But the wild card here is Nicholas Kuhn, or maybe even Leo Labata returning if he's fit enough. But the name that keeps coming up is Odin Thiago Holm, who might finally get the nod in midfield alongside McGregor and O'Reilly if Rodgers decides to shuffle things. And then there's the matter of energy. We've looked flat, predictable. It's the same players doing the same things, and the spark just hasn't been there. This is where guys like Holm, Young, maybe even Paulo Bernardo have to step up. Rodgers has to back the players who are hungry, not just those with seniority. Because right now, it feels like Celtic are at a crossroads. There's still enough quality in this team to win the league. Let's not kid ourselves. But if we sleepwalk through these matches, that gap at the top is going to shrink, and quickly. We can't just rely on our record against teams like Dundee. We need performances. We need urgency. We need a response. But that's not even half of it. With injuries mounting, players out of form, and rumors swirling around the manager and potential January moves, this next stretch of games is going to define Celtic's season. How we respond, how Brendan Rodgers responds, will tell us whether we're just limping toward the finish line or actually building something again. So looking ahead to Sunday, there's a real sense that this match isn't just about 3 points, it's about identity. Celtic have spent too much of this season searching for rhythm, stumbling through games where the quality on the pitch hasn't matched the expectations of the support. Brendan Rodgers has spoken time and time again about building a team that dominates the ball, that controls the tempo, that plays with bravery. But we've not seen that consistently. And the longer that gap between the ideal and the reality continues, the more the pressure builds. Now, when it comes to team selection, this is where things could get interesting. There's been calls, loud ones, for Rodgers to freshen things up. Not just tactically, but with personnel. We've seen the same midfield trio time and time again this season, and it just hasn't clicked. Callum McGregor is still doing the job, no doubt about that, but he looks overworked. Matt O'Reilly started the season flying, but his influence has faded a bit. And then you've got Paulo Bernardo or David Turnbull slotting in now and again, but neither has made the spot their own. There's a real case to be made that someone like Odin Holm deserves a proper run. Not 10 minutes here and there, an actual start, a bit of faith, a chance to show what he's got over 90 minutes. Injuries, of course, are going to shape some of the decisions. Daisen Maeda, as mentioned, is a doubt. He was named on the bench for Japan, but didn't feature and was then withdrawn from the squad. Word is it's a leg issue, possibly his foot, and at this stage, it feels 50-50 whether he's risked on Sunday. Alistair Johnston could be back in the squad after his own spell out, and that'd be a huge boost. Defensively, we've not been terrible, but there's something about Johnston's presence, his aggression, his intelligence, that makes the whole backline look more secure. In goals, there's even a bit of uncertainty. Joe Hart's been the usual number one, but with international duty and a short turnaround, there's talk that Benjamin Siegrist or even the young Toby Aluyewami could step in, though that feels like a stretch. Still, with the likes of Gustav Lagerbielke and Yuki Kobayashi not even getting a sniff lately, you wouldn't rule anything out. And that brings us to the front line. With Maeda out, someone has to step up. Yang Hyun-jun might be the favorite to start, but he's not exactly lit things up. Luis Palma has had moments of magic. That goal against Motherwell springs to mind, but he's also drifted out of games far too easily. Then there's Mikey Johnston, who's been back in training and could get a run. But let's be honest, that feels more like a rotation option than a first choice. The wild card is Marco Tilio, barely seen since arriving, but maybe this is the kind of game where he gets a shot to show what he's about. And then, of course, there's Kyogo, our main man, the one who, when he's on form, makes everything else click. But this season, he's looked a bit isolated. He's still scoring goals, but not at the same blistering rate we saw last year. The link-up hasn't been quite as sharp, the movement hasn't been quite as explosive, but he's still the most dangerous player on the pitch when he gets the right service. That's why Rodgers has to get the midfield balance right. If we control that area, Kyogo will do what Kyogo does. But beyond individuals, it's the mentality that matters now. Celtic need to go to Dens Park and put down a marker. Not just win the game, but dominate it from the first whistle. Take control, set the tempo, press high, force errors, and punish them. None of this passive possession for the sake of it. We need urgency. We need aggression. We need to see a team that looks like it's playing with belief again. Because what's at stake here isn't just league position. It's momentum. It's confidence. It's the connection between the team and the fans. Too many games this season have felt flat. The atmosphere's been tense, not electric. And while the crowd always turns up, they need something back from the team. They need to see players busting a gut, making brave decisions, playing with courage and conviction. That's why this isn't just another routine away trip. It's a chance to reset, to relaunch the campaign, in a sense. Coming off the international break, the squads had time to rest, reset, maybe even reflect. Rodgers has had time to work on things, away from the weekly churn of matches. And now we get to see what that work has produced. And as strange as it sounds, all this noise about January might actually help. The idea that Celtic are already planning, already identifying targets, already lining up deals, that could give everyone a lift. The message would be clear: we're not standing still. We're going again. We're not waiting for problems to fix themselves. We're addressing them head-on. Of course, all of that depends on whether the club actually follows through. We've heard big plans before. We've heard about ambition. But this time, with the title race looking tighter and Europe already a bit of a lost cause, Celtic can't afford to get it wrong. Not in January. Not with Rangers breathing down our necks. Not with Rodgers potentially weighing up his own future. And maybe that's the biggest question of all right now. Not the next match. Not even the next signing. But the bigger picture: where is this club going? Is Brendan Rodgers really the man to take Celtic forward, long-term? If he stays, what does he need to do it properly? And if he leaves, are the board ready for what comes next? Because that's the thing. There's a sense, among supporters, that we're drifting. That we're caught in this weird middle ground. Too good to collapse, not sharp enough to dominate. And that's not good enough for Celtic. Not with our history. Not with our support. Not with the standards we're supposed to uphold. So maybe Sunday's just a small piece of the puzzle. Maybe it's just one game. But it could also be the start of something. A spark. A shift. A sign that we're finally ready to move out of first gear and start playing the kind of football we all know this team is capable of. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. There's a growing buzz across Scottish football circles this week, and it's all centered around one man, John McGINN. Word on the street is that the Aston Villa captain could be on his way back north, swapping the claret and blue of Birmingham for the green and white hoops of Celtic Park. While nothing official has emerged from either club, whispers suggest McGINN has already said his goodbyes at Bodymore Heath, and may even have taken the reins as a dressing room leader at Celtic, helping to set the tone for what could be a blockbuster reunion with Scottish football. It's a story that feels almost poetic. McGINN, who rose to prominence at Hibernian before becoming a fan favorite in England's Premier League, has long been admired by Celtic, the very club that famously let him slip through their fingers back in 2018. Now, it seems fate might be handing them a second chance. Sources close to the Parkhead camp hint that Brendan Rodgers has been eager to add both grit and leadership to his midfield, and McGinn's arrival would tick both boxes in style. Known for his tenacity, sharp footballing brain, and infectious energy, he's exactly the type of player who could command the Celtic dressing room. What's more, several Celtic players are said to be buzzing about the idea of McGINN joining, describing him as the sort who could lift the mood and raise standards. The Scotland international, who captained Aston Villa to European football, is understood to have held informal chats with a few familiar faces in Glasgow. Villa supporters, meanwhile, are torn. Many see McGINN as the beating heart of their side, a leader who embodies their recent rise under Unai Emery. Others sense that his time in the Premier League might be coming to a natural close, with the lure of leading Celtic and competing in the Champions League simply too strong to resist. Nothing is confirmed, but the noise is growing louder by the day. Whether this is just idle chatter or the first tremor of a genuine transfer shock remains to be seen. One thing's for sure. If McGINN does walk out at Celtic Park in green and white, it'll be one of the biggest homecomings Scottish football has seen in years. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.